Horrific couch crater death of a recluse. Have you ever thought about how you would want your corpse to be disposed of? It's a morbid thought, thinking of your own death, but in many ways it's something to confront if you want your death to feel respected. Whether through burial, cremation, or otherwise, humans have developed ways of disposing bodies for not only honoring the memory of the dead, but also arguably, more importantly, to keep communities from accumulating rot and disease from decaying bodies. Unfortunately for the subject of today's video, the corpse of Lacey Fletcher was defiled in a way that has led to her case being one of the most extreme, shocking cases of abusive neglect in recent memory. So who was Lacey Fletcher? How did she die? And why was her body infamously found melted into a living room couch? Let's find out. On the morning of January 3, 2022, in the small rural town of Slaughter, Louisiana, local police officers received a 911 phone call from 64-year-old Sheila Fletcher. Sheila told the authorities that her daughter, Lacey Fletcher, wasn't breathing. What started as a call that the officers would assume was for a straightforward death would turn into something much, much worse. Responding to the emergency call was coroner Dr. Ewell Dewitt Bickham. As Bickham arrived, he was greeted by the Fletchers' small, pristine two-story home. But despite an unassuming exterior, the moment Bickham stepped foot into their home, something was horribly wrong. The stench. The house itself on the outside was spotless. Even the inside was at first glance tidy, but the air was thick with a putrid stench. Bickham would remember it as being so foul as to almost run you out of the house. Bickham knew that this death was surely a potential crime scene and immediately called his detective to the scene. Sheila and her husband Clay Fletcher were in the kitchen when Bickham and authorities saw the source of the horrible stench. Along the wall was a brown leather sofa. Sitting in it was Lacey Fletcher. As her mother had said, Lacey wasn't breathing. She was dead on arrival, but her condition was much, much worse than any of them were expecting. Lacey had been rotting alive on that couch, melted into the cushions, smeared and defiled by her own excrement. It was unlike anything that Dr. Bickham had ever seen in his life, a scene that would be burned into his memory. Her body was emaciated and slumped in the hole that bore through the leather, legs pulled up and crossed. Her corpse had no clothes aside from a blue patterned t-shirt pulled up to her shoulders. Her eyes were wide, staring, mouth and teeth fully open, but her face was anything but unblemished. Large blotches of red covered her face, bitten away by insects. The excrement was all over, even in her ears, filled with her own hair, and her flesh had been eaten away, large yellow swaths, and blackened to the point of being unrecognizable. And yet, what may have been more disturbing was being reminded of the normality surrounding this otherwise gruesome scene. It was unthinkable. To the right of the couch was a neat pile of clothes next to a commode, presumably for Lacey. There was a cluttered black table with otherwise normal cleaning products. There were neatly stacked DVDs. Everything except Lacey's deathbed had looked as if it was a perfectly normal home of a normal family. When questioned, Sheila and Clay Fletcher had no explanation for this disturbing scene. The week after Lacey's body was discovered, Bickham was unable to eat and cried every day, haunted by what he saw in that house that day. In May 2022, a grand jury was presented evidence to rule whether or not the Fletchers would be charged with second-degree murder and stand trial. A medical team was staffed outside the courtroom, ready to attend to jurors who wouldn't be able to stomach the graphic images of the crime scene. According to Bickham's report, 36-year-old Lacey Fletcher's official time of death was on January 3, 2022 at 3:07 a.m. She was thought to have died at least 24 to 48 hours prior to his arrival. Her body weighed 96 pounds, the cause of death being determined as a combination of chronic malnutrition, acute starvation, immobility, acute ulcer formation, and bone infection, leading to sepsis. A positive reading for COVID-19 may have contributed to her declining health. Examination of her flesh revealed that Lacey may have sat in the couch that she died in, unmoved, for an unfathomable 12 whole years. As Bickham would recall from that day, when I was presenting the case and showed the pictures and gave the timeline, the expressions of the grand jury was utter shock. Like the clock on the wall never moved again. There was complete silence. Some jurors were gasping in horror. Some were staring in disbelief. The pictures spoke for themselves. Sheila and Clay were arrested shortly after the trial. However, they would be released from jail on $300,000 bond each, 36 hours afterward. As of the making of this video, their trial is tentatively set for February 2023. Why did Lacey die the way she did? There are several questions surrounding the case of Lacey Fletcher. What caused Lacey to become bound to the couch for over a decade? Why did her parents treat her the way they did? Let's try and piece together what is known about the Fletchers. When reports first came out on the death of Lacey, various sources had claimed that Lacey suffered from locked-in syndrome or pseudocoma. This rare neurological condition describes a patient that has psychological awareness of their surroundings and self, but is unable to move or communicate verbally due to full-body paralysis except for the eyes. Under this theory, the Fletchers would have deliberately left their daughter on the couch to die, presumably due to the costs of taking care of her immobile body, horrifically leaving her powerless to stop it. However, there are several issues. The Fletchers had no apparent financial problems. Their release on bond showed that. Sheila had worked as a city official, and Clay was an officer of the nonprofit Baton Rouge Civil War Roundtable. And when questioned, the two were adamant that Lacey was of sound mind to make her own type of decisions, never complaining about her sores, and that Sheila routinely cleaned them. This meant that Lacey was capable of communicating more than pseudocoma would suggest. Indeed, Dr. Bickham would debunk this, saying that the only diagnosis that I know she did have was first social anxiety, severe autism, and that's it. Those are her only two diagnoses. Looking at Lacey's past paints a better understanding. As a child, Lacey attended Brownfields Baptist Academy in Baton Rouge until the 9th grade, when she transitioned into becoming homeschooled. With diagnosis of aforementioned social anxiety and autism, as a teenager, she met with a psychologist several times over the course of 3 years, between 1999 and the early 2000s. Her last visit to a doctor was in 2010. In 2011 to 2012, according to the Fletchers, Lacey had refused to leave the living room, rooting herself to the couch. To care for her, her parents brought her meals and set up a commode for her, but she had feared leaving the couch so much that she relieved herself into a towel or the floor instead. The parents had considered putting Lacey into a medical facility, but because Lacey was unwilling, they never tried again. They claimed that because Lacey was never sick, she never saw a doctor in the past decade. It seems clear that Lacey had various mental health conditions and that the Fletchers may have been dangerously accommodating to her, increasing anxiety, homeschooling, giving rise to deteriorating mental health. In this light, this makes the Fletchers seem woefully naive at best. When corroborated with other accounts, however, there may be more suspicion in her parents' actions. When news got out on Lacey's death, several friends that knew her from grade school spoke up about her, asserting that in school she was not reclusive, having a social life and playing sports. By all accounts, a normal girl. Regarding Lacey's death, one friend, Tina Head, said she loved music, especially country music, loved Disney World, talked about it all the time. She would send us emails all the time about how much she loved it, and would send us videos of all the rides she loved. We have emails from her up until 2014. There's a group of about 12 of us who have been speaking in a group since all of this came out. Most of us went to school with her, a couple of our mothers, and even one of our middle school teachers. We were all in complete shock. We all thought over the years that something was strange. I would always look at Sheila's Facebook and see that her and Clay were always out and about at dinners and LSU sporting events and family gatherings, but never anything of Lacey. She never even spoke of her. I looked back at her page one time, and the last time she had posted a picture of her was back in 2011, I believe. Who goes over a decade without posting a picture of their child? So something has always felt off, but none of us could have ever imagined this. Allison Falcon, another friend of Lacey, corroborated this, saying, "We went to a small private school with Lacey from kindergarten to 9th grade. Lacey was far from nonverbal and immobile during those years. While she did have some learning differences, which was later diagnosed as autism, she had friends, played on a volleyball team and bowling league, had slumber parties, loved going to Disney, and most of all, loved music, especially country music and Mariah Carey. She had an outstanding memory and could recite so many facts." If Lacey had lived such a vibrant life with loving friends and community, then how would she become completely couchbound? Given the fact that even though Lacey's parents were considered pillars of the community, many friends and neighbors of the family didn't even know the two had a daughter. It's safe to assume that there could have been abuse involved. Homeschooling is a common tactic of long-term abuse to isolate victims and prevent them from getting help. But if that was the case, then why did Sheila call 911 when the couple could just as easily have buried Lacey's corpse and kept her existence a secret? If it was atonement, why be released on bond? For now, all we can say for sure is that the Fletchers let their only child die an unforgivable death. So there you have it. This video is dedicated to the memory of Lacey Fletcher. We hope that justice will be served on her behalf. Do you believe the Fletcher's story? Or do you think there was foul play and abuse involved? Let us know in the comments below. If you appreciated this video, make sure to like and subscribe for more true crime coverage. Thanks for watching, and see you soon in the next video.